Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. Here's a picture that I took a few years ago in Finland. Why am I using it today? Well, because there is a distinctly wintry flavour to the outlook. But before I go ahead, just throw up this important caveat, which is, as most people know, the weather in the United Kingdom is notoriously difficult to predict more than a few days ahead. There are no guarantees, but let's have a look at what may happen. And I'll begin with the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation runs from 18 GMT, Tuesday the 6th of December. High pressure centred to the northwest, low pressure to the southwest. Cold Arctic air is beginning to flood down across the UK. And as I run this, it's a cold theme which becomes established. Possibility of a disturbance running southwards on Thursday. I'll come back to that in a moment. It could bring some sleet or snow. And then as we go into the weekend, it's remaining cold or very cold. A lot of dry weather in much of the UK, but the chance of snow showers around coastal counties in particular. Also some indications on this particular sequence of a risk of snow in central and southeastern England, but that's very, very uncertain. Maybe just some showers pushing further inland for a time, possibly bringing a cover in. Running this through to its conclusion, and it's all ice to the southwest because it's a deep area of low pressure which is beginning to encroach. Very mild air associated with it, lots of moisture, lots of precipitation. It brings the chance at least of heavy snow as the mild air mass moves up from the southwest and bumps into the cold one which is situated over the UK. The snow would be close to the boundary zone between the air masses. Where exactly that would become slow moving, very difficult to predict. There are some suggestions that southern and central Britain could see a very heavy snowfall through the second week of the forecast, but I'll just discuss that again in a little bit more depth later on. The air temperature sequence associated with that GFS run, again it starts 18 GMT, Tuesday the 6th, and it's worth just bearing in mind that blue shading really indicates cold air at this time of the year. As I run it, the UK is under blue shading and it stays blue for the entire duration. This finishes again 21 GMT, Tuesday the 13th of December. The very mild air associated with the area of low pressure beginning to push up from the southwest. Where that goes will have a big impact on how things develop further down the line. But just taking a look at some of the temperatures down at the ground level, which we can expect through the first week. So Wednesday the 7th of December, these are forecast maximums. It's cold, 3s or 4s in southern and central counties, 1s and 2s as you head northwards. And by Friday, it's even colder. Parts of the north struggling to see temperatures rising above freezing point. So ice days possible there. Even in the south, it's a very cold scenario. Then going forwards to Sunday, very little changes. Very cold or even bitterly cold. And there will be some sharp or severe night frosts developing through the first week. Here's an example, 06 GMT, Monday the 12th, based on data from the GFS model, down to -5 Celsius in southern and central counties, a few degrees lower in the north. But some of the other computer model runs have been showing the chance of exceptionally low values. I'll have a look in a moment, but just looking at forecast maximums for Tuesday, an ice day possible in parts of the UK, temperatures staying at or below 0 Celsius. Here is an example of a computer model showing some really notably low values. 06 GMT, Saturday the 10th of December. The chart is based on data from the UK Met Office global model. It's a deterministic, so it's just a one-off snapshot. But you can see in northern England there, in the Pennines, the valleys, I would imagine, dipping down to -19 Celsius. Is it likely to happen? Can we expect values to go this low? A lot will depend on local factors. If there is snow cover, clear skies, calm conditions under a slack pressure gradient, then there could indeed be some extremely low temperatures recorded through the first week. One or two model runs have actually pointed towards -20 Celsius being recorded in the Scottish Glens. Definitely something that needs bearing in mind. I mentioned on the GFS sequence that there was a feature running down for the western part of the UK. It has a potential to bring a little bit of sleet and snow through Thursday and into Friday. The higher resolution UKV model shows something a little bit different happening. I'll just quickly run the sequence and watch what happens here. An area of light snow moves across Wales and into central and southeastern England before it fades away. It has the potential to give a covering in Wales in particular, several centimetres there being shown by the start of Saturday, so the snow would be falling through Thursday night, maybe into Friday, and clearing away later on. And also, if you look closely, there's just a few speckles there in parts of southern and southeastern England. The chance of a sprinkling, maybe even here in the Chilterns, it's something which I'll be looking out for on Friday. I don't think it will be disruptive, although with several centimetres there in Wales, it could cause a few issues, but just a sprinkling, as I say, is possible in central and southern England. Whilst I'm on this chart, you can see further snow cover in the north and particularly the northern half of Scotland. That is where snow is likely to be heavy during Wednesday and into Thursday. Disruption very, very likely up there. Rainfall, or I should say precipitation. I'm not going to focus too much on these charts today. In fact, I'll miss out the 0 to 5 day ones and go straight to the 0 to 10 day period. On the left, ECM, on the right, GFS. The reason I think they do have some importance is because if you see the totals on the ECM chart on the left, in southern and central regions between 15 and 30 millimetres, that doesn't sound like an awful lot of rain, but much of it is being forecast to fall as snow. ECM bringing up the area of low pressure from the southwest, and it's given very, very heavy falls of snow in parts of southern and central Britain. The charts suggest maybe up to 30 centimetres locally. GFS on the right shows less precipitation. I think the area of low pressures may be tracking a little bit further southwards. Nonetheless, there could still be significant snow cover in southern Britain if it is correct. It's through the first few days of the second week. That's a period which I think needs watching very closely. Also, it's worth pointing out that with the ECM chart, because it has the low pressure area tracking a little bit further north, milder air makes it into southwestern England and perhaps more widely in counties to the south of London just for a short time. So the snow could probably turn back to rain before the whole system moves away and colder air is reintroduced. But a lot of uncertainty about the potential for heavy snow in southern Britain during the second week. I'll look at the ensemble data in a moment. But before I do, a quick look at a couple of the GFS snow depth forecast charts. The one on the left is for 00 GMT, Sunday the 11th of December. On the right, 00 GMT, Friday the 16th. These are just snapshots, and personally I don't rate them very highly, but they're quite interesting to take a look at because sometimes you can pick up patterns and trends from them. The left-hand side one, I think, will be reasonably accurate for the northern half of Scotland because there is going to be some heavy snow falling there during the first few days. So on Wednesday, as I mentioned, there could well be some disruption. But the right-hand side chart, so Friday the 16th of December, this covers the period when that area of low pressure moves up from the southwest. And as I've mentioned, there's a good deal of uncertainty about the exact track that it will be taking. GFS makes it an all-snow event in southern Britain. In fact, look at Devon and Cornwall, depths of around 30 centimetres in places. Very, very newsworthy if this is what happens. On the other hand, the ECM model, which I'm not showing here, has that low pressure moving a little bit further north, milder air getting into the southwest, snow turning back to rain. Very, very difficult to be confident how this will play out. It's also distinctly possible that the area of low pressure will stay to the south of the UK, meaning even the southwest would remain dry, but it does need watching. Right, so at the end of week 1, how are the deterministic models stacking up against each other? Are they all going off in different directions, or are they consistently pointing towards this cold or very cold scenario? Here's the GFS, which the animation was based on. And the charts this week are a little bit different because I'm showing surface pressure, but also 850 HPA temperature, so about 1,500 meters above sea level on these. As I mentioned earlier, key is that blue indicates cold. And GFS has the UK there, under the cold air mass, the deep area of low pressure looking threatening at this point to the southwest. The Canadian model, it's a very, very similar story. There are, of course, differences in the details, but the big picture is the same. The German icon, also consistent. There's the low pressure, the UK here under the blue shading. And the European ECM, similar, the low pressure there to the southwest. And as I say, this goes on to show that low pressure area moving a little bit further north than the GFS, but that's a detail, an important one, but impossible to predict at this stage. Finally, the UK Met Office global model. The areas of low pressure to the southwest are slacker, they're not as deep. The UK is under a very cold east or northeasterly flow. The low pressure systems with their associated moisture to the south do look less of an issue on this particular model run, but again, don't focus on the details. The important point with these deterministics is they all show a cold pattern across the UK at the end of the first week. There is that risk of rain, sleet and snow moving up from the southwest. And it's just worth taking a quick look at the UK Met Office Mogreps G ensemble plot. These are individual runs within it. Each stamp represents a different forecast run. And the idea is to look for commonalities or differences between them. They all have the starting conditions adjusted slightly to help account for uncertainty in the atmospheric conditions at the outset. It's impossible to know the exact state of the atmosphere when these models are initiated just because there isn't enough data being fed into them. The key takeaway here is that I think 1 or 2 are bringing in milder air from the southwest into Devon and Cornwall by this time, so Tuesday the 13th of December. The majority, though, the big majority, keep the UK, all of it, under a cold scenario. So good consistency from the Mogreps G ensemble, fits in well with what the deterministic runs are showing. Extremely likely that by the end of the first week, it will be cold across all parts of the country. Just a chance that it could start to turn milder in the southwest by then. Unlikely, I think, but that would also lead to the growing possibility of rain, sleet and snow. Well, a wintry first week, will that continue into the second week or is change on the way? Things become very uncertain. I'll start with the 16-day GEFS plot for London. Air mass temperatures across the top. At the start of week 2, the vast majority of runs are below the thick black line, which is a 30-year norm, considerably below it. So it's cold or very cold. There are a few, though, which are above it, and later on the number of those increases. The thick purple line, the ensemble mean, which is generated by averaging all of them out, starts to track upwards, and from around the 17th, 18th, 19th of December, it's close to the thick black line, the 30-year norm. So the number of milder runs increases as we head through the second week, but there is still a big cluster which shows a continuation of cold weather. Precipitation across the bottom, a number of spikes there, and the snow row counts, those give the number of runs on a given day, which are forecasting snow to fall but not necessarily accumulate. Stays quite high, it reaches a maximum there of 12 at the beginning of the second week. It does dip a little, but even at the very end, 6 of the runs are going for snow falling. The maximum value the snow row can take is 33. Therefore, I've annotated this as being a moderate risk of snow falling at some point through the second week. The GEFS snow depth charts, well, I'm not a huge fan of them, as I've already indicated. I just think there are so many variables for accumulating snow in the UK, and the models really struggle with those. But here's a London one. It's worth taking a look at. Through the first week towards the end there, a number of runs are forecasting accumulating snow, and that continues to be the case through the second. There is one notable run there, the red line, which shoots up off the top of the screen on the 19th of December. If we look at the snow depth, which is forecasting, well, the vertical scale, I've only plotted up to 50 centimetres and it's going off the top. Wouldn't that be incredible if London had more than 50 centimetres of snow falling on one day? It's just one run out of 33, which is suggesting that. Very, very unlikely, but what a turn up for the books it would be if it happened. The 2 metre temperature data table for London. Initially, there's quite a lot of blues there, 20 to 30%. Those are runs going for ice days, but it's the dark green which makes up the bulk, maximums of between 1 and 5 Celsius. But the trend later on is for it to become less cold, or at least more of the individual runs are starting to lift temperatures. By the end, there's quite a lot of the light green showing up. It's above 30%. Those runs going for between maximums of 6 and 10 Celsius. There's even a little yellow returning 11 to 15 daytime maximums. So all in all, it's very cold to begin with, but there is that possibility, at least that growing possibility later on, of it turning milder, both down at the surface and at the upper level. Going up to Manchester to see if the trends are comparable. Air mass temperatures, similar to the London plot, the number of mild runs increases later on. The precipitation spikes are generally a similar pattern as well. The snow row count's a little bit higher, but not much. Therefore, a moderately high risk of snow falling at some point through week 2. Snow depths for Manchester. For more runs, forecasting accumulating snow than there were on the London plot. I don't think a huge number more, but a few. Therefore, a higher chance than in London of snow settling through the second week in particular. The 2 metre temperature data table for Manchester, it's following a similar trend to the London one, more light green later on, even a little bit of yellow. But I think it's indicating that the chance of milder conditions returning as you head northwards is lower. That backs up the theory that it's mild air which will be approaching from the south or southwest rather than from the west or the northwest even. So it fits in quite nicely with some of the other data. Up to Glasgow, once more, it's a similar trend. Very cold at the beginning of week 2, but later on, possibly milder. Just backs up what I've said about the Manchester plot. There are fewer runs here than there were on Manchester one, which in turn had fewer than London one, bringing back milder conditions towards the end. The snow rows and rain spikes, precipitation spikes across the bottom, indicating a moderately high risk of snow falling at some point through the second week. And the snow depth chart for Glasgow, more runs here through week 2, forecasting accumulating snow, but not a definite, but a good chance. And the 2 metre data table, 2 metre temperature data table for Glasgow, lots of blue to begin with. The majority ice days being forecast for the northwest of the UK between 0 Celsius and -8 maximums. Later on, the amount of dark green increases, runs going for between 1 and 5 Celsius, and there's a little bit of light green. But the picture here is certainly more conducive towards it remaining cold or very cold through week 2. Just taking a look at the bigger picture now, here's the GEFS mean surface level pressure plot for 10 days ahead, so Friday the 16th of December. Looks like low pressure to the southwest still, to the west of the southwest, higher pressure to the north, a negative North Atlantic oscillation pattern probably persisting at this point, but there is growing uncertainty. The -5C 850 HPA temperature isotherm there is bisecting Wales, Northern Ireland and Southern England, so it's cold or very cold at this point, probably according to most of the runs in the ensemble. The comparable plot from the European ECM, similar, although the -5C line here is a little bit further northeast than it was on the GEFS, possibly indicating a greater chance of milder air, at least moving into southern Britain. Just one final data table I thought was worth taking a look at. It's a mean surface level pressure plot from the GEFS. I've picked York, a fairly central location. Thought it was worth drawing attention to because the oranges in the columns are showing runs which are going for very high pressure between 1026 and 1040 millibars. And there is a significant number of them, especially later on. There's even one or two runs which are going for over 1040 millibars. That's shown by the pink shading appearing in the last few days. Just one thing that does cross my mind, this data may be indicating there is a chance of high pressure forming somewhere close to the UK later towards the end of the second week and beyond it. If that happened, we could end up with very, very cold conditions down at the surface, even if the air aloft was significantly milder by then. So it's not a given that if we see a transition through the second week, it's going to be turning more changeable and milder with a greater risk of rain, sleet and snow as areas of low pressure push up from the southwest. There is a chance, at least, that high pressure may be building close to the United Kingdom. Well, I've covered quite a lot there, but here's the summary. Week 1, it turns very cold or even bitterly cold, frosts widespread, severe on some nights. There is that chance of exceptionally low values being recorded, at least if one or two of the computer models are correct. Snow is favoured to be mostly in the north and east through the first few days. Disruptive snow is expected in the northern half of Scotland. There is a chance of it falling elsewhere. There could be some light snow pushing southeastwards across Wales and into southern and central England on Thursday into Friday. Maybe a little bit of snow in the southeast and East Anglia at the weekend. Week 2, the likelihood is it will be starting very cold with snow showers mostly focused on the north and the east of the UK, but there is a signal for milder air to begin trying to return from the southwest. This is where things become extremely uncertain because it leads to the possibility of heavy and disruptive snow, but how quickly that mild air will spread northwards is open to a lot of question at the moment. There is even a chance that the low pressure areas which are pushing it up from the southwest will stay well away from the United Kingdom and all the country would remain under colder and drier conditions. But taking everything into account, the chance at least of milder conditions increases later on, especially in the southern half of the United Kingdom. But it's not a given. I just floated the idea based on the GEFS surface level pressure data that we could see high pressure forming close to the UK towards the end of the second week, and that would lead to a cold and dry scenario. So there we have it, a very wintry outlook, possibly a notable spell of cold weather with snow becoming more widespread and disruptive through the second week. But it's really very, very important to emphasise there is much uncertainty. Forecasting snow in the UK is extremely difficult. Forecasting the weather in general more than a few days ahead here is a challenge too. Therefore, stay up to date with the short range forecasts to see how things develop as we head through the next 2 weeks. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks for watching now. Bye.